I knew I was never Nina Voss's favorite. But I didn't think she hated me, at least not at first. She was my boss, the creative director of Windcroft and Company, and the kind of woman who walked like she owned every room she entered. All black wardrobe, razor-sharp bob, lipstick the color of dried blood. She had a reputation for being brilliant and brutal, and she lived up to both. She rarely smiled, never repeated herself, and treated compliments like currency she wasn't willing to spend. So I respected her. I worked hard under her. For 4 years I kept my head down, took every client, handled every deadline, fixed other people's mistakes, and never once asked for special treatment. I wasn't flashy like some of the others, but I was dependable, professional, good at what I did. So when the senior designer position opened up, I thought, maybe all that quiet work would finally mean something. My teammates thought so too. "It's yours hands down," they told me. "You've earned it." Even Evan, our office's self-declared golden boy, conceded that I'd probably get the role. "You're like Nina's shadow," he said once. "Only nicer." But 2 weeks later the announcement came. Evan got the promotion. No warning. No explanation. Just a bland company-wide email and a tray of congratulatory cupcakes in the break room, as if sugar could sweeten the slap in the face. I found out while sitting at my desk, halfway through drafting a lighting concept for a client's kitchen remodel. One of the interns poked her head in. "Hey," she whispered. "Did you see the email?" I opened it. Read it. Closed it. Evan strolled by 5 minutes later, grinning like he'd just won a reality show. "No hard feelings, right?" he said, clapping my shoulder. I smiled back, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Of course not." Then I walked into the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and stared at the door in silence for 10 minutes. I wasn't angry at Evan. Not really. He was talented in an impulsive, shoot-from-the-hip kind of way. What stung was Nina. The silence. The fact that I hadn't even been called in for a conversation. Not even a thank you for your effort, but nothing. I told myself to let it go. That promotions weren't promises. That maybe it wasn't personal. But when I returned to my desk, I noticed Nina passing by. She didn't stop. Didn't look at me. Just walked on, her heels echoing against the polished floor. And in that glance, or lack of one, I saw it. Smugness. Like she knew I was hurt. Like she wanted me to be. And that's when I realized something I hadn't wanted to believe. This wasn't just about a promotion. It was about power. And Nina had just drawn the first line in a battle I didn't know I was in. The Monday after Evan's promotion, something changed. Not in a dramatic, headline-worthy way, but in small, calculated shifts. The kind of changes you don't notice right away until they start adding up. That's how Nina operated. Quietly. With precision. Like she was tightening invisible screws around your ankles, one turn at a time until you couldn't move. The first screw was my project calendar. I logged in to find 2 of my assignments reassigned to Evan. No explanation, no note. One of them, a luxury penthouse renovation in Gold Coast, I'd been working on for weeks. My name was removed from the shared folder. When I asked our project coordinator about it, she blinked, confused. "Sorry, I thought you handed that off?" I hadn't. But I let it go. Then came the client cancellations. 3 in 1 week. All recurring accounts I had personally cultivated. Suddenly they were switching directions, or deciding to pause their redesign. But I knew the tone of those emails. That wasn't client language, it was corporate damage control. Someone else was writing them. Softly, slowly, pushing me out of sight. Next my desk was moved. No warning. Just an email from IT. "Your workstation has been reassigned to pod 3B. That put me at the far end of the office, behind a row of shelving units, out of the main floor's line of sight. From the center of creative energy to the design equivalent of a supply closet. I wheeled my chair over, unpacked my things, and sat in silence. On my first day at that desk, Nina walked by twice and didn't so much as glance in my direction. But the worst was the storage room. Windcroft's product storage room was essentially our in-house showroom. It held sample kits, imported tiles, fabric swatches, brass fixtures, light fittings, stuff you couldn't just borrow without clearance. It was under lock and key with a paper log at the front for anyone who checked out items. One afternoon, I went to retrieve a set of marble sample tiles for a client. The cabinet where they were kept was unlocked. 2 of the sample boards were gone. I checked the logbook. My name was written there. That day with a timestamp of 10:17 a.m. The problem? I hadn't been in the storage room at all that day. At 10:17 I was presenting a bathroom layout to a client on Zoom. I had the call recorded. Still the signature looked close. Not perfect. A loop too high, a tail slightly off, but close enough to pass if no one was looking too hard. I stared at it for a long time. Then I closed the logbook and walked back to my desk without saying a word. Because suddenly I understood something. This wasn't negligence. This wasn't a mix-up. It was a setup. And someone was trying to make it look like I was stealing. Or sloppy. Or both. And that someone was almost certainly Nina. The next morning I started arriving to work an hour early. Not to prove anything but to watch. To document. To listen. I kept a notebook in my bag. Every whisper. Every strange shift. Every time someone looked at me too long or not at all. I tracked it all. Because something in my gut told me this wasn't just pettiness. Nina wasn't just trying to demoralize me. She was trying to bury me. And I wasn't going to let her. The morning it all came crashing down started like any other. I got to the office early, 7:42 a.m. as usual. The building was quiet the way I liked it. I brewed a cup of burnt coffee from the shared Keurig, logged into my system and started answering emails with mechanical precision. It was almost peaceful. By 8:30 the team began to trickle in. Evan walked past with his usual smug swagger, offering me a nod and a "Hey superstar," like he hadn't taken my promotion right out from under me. Nina arrived at 8:45 sharp, striding past with her oversized tote and air of forced indifference. As always, she didn't acknowledge me. At 9:05 the email hit my inbox. Subject: Mandatory HR meeting, immediate. No explanation. No details. Just a line at the bottom. Please report to conference room 2B at 9:15 a.m. My stomach tightened. This wasn't a surprise check-in. This wasn't normal. When I walked into the conference room, Leslie from HR was already waiting. Neatly dressed, expression unreadable, 2 folders in front of her and a cup of tea that was still steaming. Nina was seated beside her. That was the first red flag. Nina never attended HR meetings unless she was about to fire someone or crush them into powder. I sat down. Folded my hands. Waited. Leslie adjusted her glasses. We've received a formal concern regarding your conduct, she began as if she were reading off a checklist. My brows furrowed. What kind of concern? Nina leaned forward, resting her elbow on the table like this was just a casual conversation. Items have gone missing from the storage room. High-value items. Imported fixtures, custom hardware. A full set of crystal sconces. Several sample kits. Things that don't just walk out of here. My heartbeat began to rise. And you think I took them? Leslie raised a paper from the folder. Your name is in the access logbook for each of the dates the items disappeared. You signed them out. I took the paper. Scanned it. The signature was close enough to pass to an outsider. But it wasn't mine. I could see it immediately. The slant was wrong. The N in my last name curved up instead of down. My real signature had a very specific loop on the L that was always open. This isn't mine, I said quietly. You're the only person with authorization to those items who hasn't accounted for them, Nina added smoothly. And your keycard was logged in at the basement level after hours. Several times. I don't have after-hours access anymore, I said. IT revoked it months ago. Nina blinked. That's strange. We'll have to follow up. She said it too quickly. Like she already knew what the answer would be. Leslie cleared her throat. Until we complete an investigation, you'll be placed on unpaid suspension effective immediately. You'll need to turn over your badge and any office property. I stared at her. You're suspending me? Without proof. We have documentation, Leslie said. You have fabricated documentation. Nina leaned back, crossing one leg over the other, satisfied. If there's been a misunderstanding, I'm sure it'll be cleared up. She looked at me like a lion watching a bleeding gazelle. I stood up slowly. My body felt cold and electric all at once. I didn't steal anything. We'll be in touch, Leslie said. I walked out of the room with my spine stiff and my jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Coworkers pretended not to notice me as I moved past the desks. A few gave me quick, sympathetic looks. One of the interns looked away completely. By the time I stepped outside, the wind was sharp, slicing through my coat. I stood on the sidewalk, dazed, suspended, thrown to the wolves. But even as my mind reeled, something inside me clicked into place. Because Nina had made a mistake. A big one. She'd forgotten who had helped set up the storage room's redesign last spring. She'd forgotten who suggested installing discrete security cameras. For insurance purposes, I had said during one of our renovation planning meetings. She'd forgotten those cameras existed. But I hadn't. And I was going to use them to burn her entire story to the ground. The subway ride home felt like moving through a tunnel underwater. Every screech of the brakes, every robotic station announcement faded behind the deafening hum of my thoughts. Suspended. Accused of theft. My career. Everything I had built over the last 4 years. Hanging by a thread because of a forged signature and a calculated lie. But Nina had made one critical mistake. She thought I'd forgotten the cameras. I hadn't. Months ago, when I led the redesign of the lower-level storage and inventory rooms, I pushed for discrete security features. It wasn't paranoia. It was practicality. We had merchandise worth thousands of dollars sitting in a room most of the staff had access to. I didn't want to risk insurance complications. And I knew for a fact we installed 2 pinhole cameras. One in the far corner of the ceiling and another near the keycard reader by the door. They weren't live-monitored, but the footage was stored in a cloud archive accessible through our internal project security server, used mostly by facilities and operations. At the time I had full access. No one ever thought to revoke it after the project ended. Not even Nina. As soon as I got home, I dropped my bag and went straight to my laptop. My hands were shaking as I typed in the login credentials for the archived project management dashboard. It had been months, but I remembered the admin path, buried 3 tabs deep under archived project footage, facility storage logs, camera C4. And there was footage, labeled by date, time-stamped. I skipped ahead to the most recent entry that matched one of the forged logbook entries. Wednesday, 8:42 p.m. The night I supposedly signed out the crystal sconces. I hit play. For a few moments, the video showed nothing but the dimly lit room. Metal shelves lined with labeled boxes, rolls of textiles, brass fixtures wrapped in plastic, lighting samples stacked by category. It was grainy but clear enough to identify faces. Then the door opened. A woman entered. My breath caught. It was Nina. She was wearing dark jeans, a black hoodie pulled tight around her face, and a ball cap that shielded part of her features. But it was unmistakably her. I'd know that walk, that posture anywhere. She paused just inside the doorway, looked over her shoulder like she was expecting someone, then quickly crossed to the back wall where the lighting samples were kept. She grabbed 2 boxes, the sconces, pulled them off the shelf, placed them inside a large black tote bag. She wasn't fumbling or confused. She knew exactly what she was doing. And then, right before leaving, she reached into her pocket, pulled out a pen, and scribbled something in the logbook beside the door. Just outside the camera's frame, but I knew exactly what she was writing. My name. My forged signature. I stared at the screen, the cold rush of vindication mixing with a sickening wave of disbelief. She'd set me up. Deliberately. Methodically. And worst of all, she probably thought she'd get away with it. I rewound the footage. Rewatched it. Paused it at each key moment. Then I downloaded it. Once as an MP4. Again as a backup. I emailed a copy to myself, then uploaded another to a private cloud drive under a nondescript folder labeled Invoices. Paranoid? Maybe. But after what Nina had done, I wasn't taking any chances. I sat back in my chair, the video paused on Nina's blurred but undeniable face. I could feel the fury rising in my chest, not hot and wild but cold. Controlled. She wanted me gone. Ruined. Silenced. She thought I was just a nice girl who wouldn't fight back. But what she didn't know, what she had forgotten, was that I built the foundation she was now trying to twist against me. And I had just found the truth she'd never expected me to look for. I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to expose her. The next morning I didn't hesitate. I dressed with purpose. Dark slacks, crisp blouse, low heels, no makeup beyond a light layer of concealer and a swipe of lipstick. Professional. Neutral. Calm. I wasn't going in as a victim. I was going in as evidence. When I arrived at Windcroft and Company, the front receptionist blinked in surprise. I thought you were on leave. I'm here to deliver something, I said, my voice cool and steady. For HR. Confidential. I didn't wait for her to buzz me in. I walked straight past her desk and into the elevator. Every step was calculated, every movement deliberate. The air in the building felt thicker than usual, like everyone already knew something was coming. Leslie from HR was in her office when I knocked. She looked up and immediately stood flustered. You shouldn't be. I have new evidence for the investigation, I said, and closed the door behind me. She didn't sit. I placed a USB drive on her desk. Surveillance footage from the basement storage unit. Wednesday at 8:42 p.m., the night the sconces disappeared. I suggest you watch it now. Her eyebrows drew together. We don't typically accept outside files. You'll want to make an exception, I said. She hesitated, then walked over to her desktop and inserted the USB drive. I watched in silence as she opened the file. The grainy footage played out, exactly as I had watched it the night before. Nina. Hood up. Ball cap low. Tote bag. 2 sconces lifted from the shelf. A quick scribble in the logbook. A glance toward the camera she clearly hadn't realized was there. Leslie's face turned pale. He watched the whole clip. No fast-forwarding. No pausing. When it ended, she sat down slowly, staring at the frozen frame of Nina stepping out the door. Do you have any idea what you're accusing her of? She asked, but her voice had lost its edge. I'm not accusing her, I said. I'm showing you exactly what she did. She rubbed her temples. This is serious. If this is real. It's real, I cut in. And it's stored in 3 places off-site, including my lawyer's inbox. Her eyes flicked up. For the first time I saw real fear in them. I leaned forward. She forged my signature. She used her position to plant false evidence. She tried to damage my professional reputation, all to cover her own theft and personal vendetta. Leslie nodded slowly. I need to speak with legal and the executive team. I'd suggest doing it soon, I said. Before she tries to spin a story you can't unspool. I left her office with nothing in my hands, but everything I needed. As I passed the bullpen, I saw Evan watching me from his new corner desk. He looked confused, curious, maybe even nervous. Good. By the time I reached the elevators, I got the confirmation I was waiting for. An alert on my phone from the cloud drive. File CM_C4_0426, accessed by HR at Windcroft. They were watching it again. I stepped into the elevator, the doors closing softly around me. My heart was beating faster now, not from fear but from satisfaction. She thought I wouldn't fight back. She thought I'd leave quietly. But instead I'd walked back in with receipts. Nina. She was about to watch the empire she built on intimidation and manipulation start to crumble. Frame by frame. By Monday morning the air inside Windcroft and Company felt different. Tense. Electric. Like something had shifted beneath the surface and no one knew quite where to step. I wasn't technically back on staff. My suspension hadn't been officially lifted, but I got a call from Leslie at 8:06 a.m., asking if I could come in for a brief follow-up conversation. Her voice was overly polite, almost clipped. Like someone had told her to tread carefully. I didn't ask questions. I put on the same calm, deliberate outfit as before and made my way into the building. The receptionist didn't say a word this time. Just looked at me wide-eyed and buzzed me through without a smile. I stepped into the elevator alone and pressed the button for the 5th floor. On the way up, I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls, composed, still, eyes sharp. Ready. Leslie was waiting outside the conference room. But this time she wasn't alone. 2 people stood with her. One I recognized from the executive floor, a senior partner named Harold Colton. The other was a woman I'd never met before, dressed in a slate gray suit and carrying a leather-bound notebook. She looked like the kind of person who cleaned up other people's messes. Thank you for coming, Leslie said, her smile brittle. I nodded. Of course. Inside the room the lights were low. No coffee. No water pitcher. Just a projector already on, the blue light humming in the background. They didn't waste time. Harold spoke first. We've reviewed the footage you submitted. The woman beside him, legal counsel, clearly added, and cross-verified it with our internal card access logs and the video backup archive. She looked me in the eye. It matches your copy. Completely. They paused as if waiting to see how I'd react. But I didn't flinch. She forged a logbook, used my name, and tried to frame me for theft, I said. You know that now. Yes, Harold said, his jaw tight. We do. There was another pause. A beat too long. I leaned forward slightly. And what are you going to do about it? He cleared his throat. Nina has been terminated, effective immediately. Her access has been revoked, and we're conducting a full audit of her past expense reports and department activities. She hasn't been seen in the building since Friday, Leslie added. Of course she hadn't. She knew what was coming. She violated your trust, the legal rep said. And we acknowledge that this situation was not handled appropriately from the start. You should never have been suspended without a full investigation. I kept my expression neutral, but inside I could feel the tide turning. We'd like to offer you a formal apology, Harold said, and reinstate you immediately with full back pay and benefits. Additionally, we're prepared to discuss an offer to advance you into a lead designer position, should you wish to stay. I raised my eyebrows. The same position that was given to Evan? A flicker of discomfort passed over Leslie's face. Harold hesitated. Yes. There was a tidy little bow on the mess they had made. Fix it all with a new title and a retroactive check. Move on. Pretend it was all a misunderstanding. But I had spent weeks walking on eggshells. I'd been humiliated, isolated, targeted. And I had saved myself. Not them. I sat back, crossed one leg over the other, and gave them the softest smile I could manage. I'll need time to consider that. The legal rep nodded. Of course. We understand. I stood and gathered my bag. And for what it's worth, I said, pausing by the door, if I hadn't remembered those cameras, would you have believed me? No one answered. That told me everything I needed to know. I walked out of the room without looking back. As I passed the bullpen, I felt the eyes on me, curious, cautious. Evan ducked into the kitchen when he saw me coming. Others looked down at their screens, pretending not to notice. But I walked tall. Because I wasn't the same woman they tried to sideline. I had exposed the lie. And now they had to sit in the truth. The email came the next morning. Subject: official offer, lead designer position. From Harold Colton. Time: 7:48 a.m. Polite. Professional. Generous on paper. It included a formal apology letter signed by 3 members of the executive team, an outline of the new compensation package, back pay for the suspension period, and a new title: Lead Interior Designer, Commercial Division. It was everything I had once wanted. But reading it now, in the quiet of my apartment with my coffee in hand and a rainstorm pressing softly against the windows, I felt nothing. No pride. No joy. No validation. Because I knew this offer didn't come from recognition. Came from fear. Fear of a wrongful termination suit. Fear of bad press. Fear that someone like me, someone smart, quiet, and observant, had beaten them at their own game. They weren't rewarding me. They were managing damage control. And suddenly, the idea of going back into that building made my skin crawl. I thought about the people who had whispered about me in the halls. The ones who didn't speak up. The ones who looked the other way when I was dragged into HR without cause. And I thought about the silence, how no one had defended me until I came back with undeniable proof. Did I really want to build my future in a place where I had to record a crime to be believed? I drafted a reply. Dear Harold, thank you for your message and the offer. I appreciate the gesture and the acknowledgement of what took place. However, after careful consideration, I've decided to decline the position. I'll be pursuing opportunities elsewhere, where integrity is a shared value, not a secret weapon. Wishing you and the team all the best. My name. I read it twice. Then hit send. It was done. An hour later, I emailed my updated resume and portfolio to 3 firms that had previously expressed interest in me. One of them, the most respected design studio in the city, responded by noon. They wanted to meet. By the end of the week, I had a job offer. Higher salary. More creative freedom. Better benefits. A team that had already heard about what happened and respected how I handled it. You didn't burn down the building, the studio director told me during our meeting. You just turned the lights on. That night I celebrated alone. No champagne. No big moment. Just me sitting on my fire escape with a takeout burger and the city glowing below. The wind cool but kind. The kind of wind that didn't sting. It carried away the weight of everything I'd been holding for too long. I didn't need to return to Windcroft and Company. I didn't need their title. I had something better. I had my name. And it was clean. 6 weeks later, I walked past Windcroft and Company for the first time since leaving. It was purely accidental. I was meeting a client at a cafe down the block, and as I strolled up the street, I noticed the familiar glass and steel facade. The same minimalistic logo etched on the door. The same perfectly arranged lobby furniture that I used to pass every morning, coffee in hand, thinking about client meetings and deadlines and deliverables. But this time I felt nothing. Not bitterness. Not fear. Not grief. Just distance. The building looked smaller somehow. Colder. Like a set I had once performed on, long before I realized the script was rigged against me. I paused across the street, watching the revolving door spin, watching employees rush in and out. Some I recognized. Some I didn't. For a brief second I wondered if they had ever heard the full story. If they knew Nina had been caught. If they knew I hadn't just left quietly but had walked out after tearing down a lie with the truth in my hands. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. But it didn't matter anymore. Because I wasn't the girl they tried to break. I was the woman who had walked into a system designed to protect the powerful. And proved that it could still be held accountable. Since joining my new firm, everything had changed. The energy was collaborative, not competitive. Ideas were welcomed, not stolen. Leadership didn't operate on manipulation or silence. They led with transparency, trust, and talent. Within my first month, I was leading a full-scale redesign of a boutique hotel chain's flagship location. The client loved my vision. My team respected my leadership. I was thriving in a way I didn't even realize I'd been starved for before. But the biggest change? I stopped questioning myself. Stopped shrinking in the presence of power. Stopped apologizing for being careful, for being prepared, for noticing the things others ignored. I had always seen the details. That's what saved me. Nina underestimated that. She thought she could write me out of the story. Instead, I rewrote the ending. I took one last look at Windcroft's office, then turned away and walked toward the cafe, my heels steady on the pavement, my head held high. Some people fight back by shouting. Some people fight back by breaking the rules. I fought back by being right. By being ready. And by remembering that the truth, no matter how buried, always has eyes on it. Even the hidden kind.